This is Walt Disney World Today. Give us 5 minutes and we'll give you the world.
It's Monday, May 18th, 2009, and this is episode 565 of WTF Today. I'm Matt Hotchkiss of StudioCentral.com. Joining me on today's show is Mike Newell of Mouse World Radio. Hiya, Mike.
I'm all ready for this weekend.
Woo! Only 4 more days, and then let the festivities begin.
Woohoo!
Also joining us on today's show is Len Testa, co-author of the Dinosaur Guide to Walt Disney World. Len, there's still time to join us.
I know. I'm working on it. I'll be checking Priceline while I go through this.
Okay, sounds good. And also on today's show is the fabulous Annette Owens of MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, who's the manager for customer relations and group services for that. And Annette, you will be joining us on this weekend.
I will be joining you, and Lynn, if you need some help trying to figure out how to get down there next week, I heard somebody that might can help you.
I heard you got a way better hotel deal than I did.
Yeah, think so.
Or airfare. I mean, sorry.
I was like, well, okay, yeah.
Well, on today's show, we're going to be talking to Len about his recent trip to Disneyland and sharing some stories. Len has some tips over here, and certainly I know that many of our listeners are interested in Disneyland, and we don't really talk about it. But you know what? Today, it's different. It's Monday. We kicked Scopa out, so let's change that a little bit just for today and talk a little bit about
Disneyland Disney World Today.
Yeah, exactly. A little Disneyland action. So Len, why don't you go ahead and I'll start counting how many questions to start out with. Well, Janine and I were.
Yeah, so it was funny. I was Wednesday. I got out. So Janine was a great story. So Wednesday, I landed. I had to get up at 3:00 in the morning. Flew out of Raleigh. So the flight was at 6:15 a.m. Got into Anaheim, I think, like at 10:30. And as soon as I got my rental car, I started doing hotel work. So the interesting thing about the Anaheim airport is that it's set up almost exactly like the rental car stuff is set up almost exactly like Orlando, in that there are no off-site rental car places. You literally walk across the street to the rental car places and pick them up. So that was great. So I was actually doing hotel research for Disneyland area hotels by like noon on Wednesday. And here's the interesting thing. I've done normally when I do hotel research, I actually check into the hotel and I stay there, right? Which tends to avoid problems sneaking around the hotel, trying to get into a room that you don't actually belong to, right? So I was a little bit concerned about doing this because I was going to 20 different offsite hotels and trying to get into the rooms by talking to housekeeping without talking to management. And I'll just say this. I was 20 for 20 in doing that. It was so remarkably easy to talk your way into a hotel room that I think there's a huge security issue there. Anyway,
I was going to say that's a little scary.
It was really, really weird. Anyway,
they all know you. I don't know.
Yeah, there's Len. So, yeah, exactly. I did have my unofficial guide shirt on, but the cool thing was the couple of hotels that were nearest to where I was staying actually had a view of the Matterhorn. So I have a picture on my cell phone camera. It's totally unlike Walt Disney World, in that you can stay off site and literally see the rides in the park. So Wednesday I did all of my dining. Wednesday night I was twittering that I was touring Downtown Disney because they have a Downtown Disney there too, which is totally lame, almost as lame as Pleasure Island was in Walt Disney World.
Why is it so lame?
It's there aren't that many. There are a couple of restaurants. I mean, there's your generic Mexican, there's your generic Italian, there's your Wetzel's Pretzels type place. The one, so it's the same stuff that you get everywhere. I didn't think any of it was very distinctive. The one cool thing that they actually had a bookstore with a coffee bar, and because I love coffee, but and pastries. The bookstore actually sold the unofficial guide to both Disney World and Disneyland. So that was the one cool thing that was there. But like every Disney retail place, they had DVC and they had Rainforest Cafe. I mean, the same stuff you get in every Disney thing. So anyway, I got done with Downtown Disney, and it's actually adjacent to, it's between the two theme parks, to DCA and Disneyland, sort of if it was a T-shaped, if Land and DCA were the two top parts of the T, Downtown Disney would be sort of the perpendicular part of the T. So I was done with that.
It seems so mathematical all of a sudden.
I know, perpendicular. I know, and it's 10 o'clock. So I walked around downtown Disney for a while, and it's actually adjacent to the Disney's Grand Californian Hotel, which is the Wilderness Lodge with a little bit more of an arts and crafts theme. So I was hanging out there. I grabbed a cup of coffee. Was hanging out in front of the huge fireplace there, and I was actually twittering as I was going along, saying, enjoying a cup of coffee in front of the fireplace at the Grand Californian. And like 5 minutes after I posted that, one of our listeners came up and said, "Hey, are you Len Testa?"
No way.
It was Janine. Yeah, it was Janine from. She's been to different Mouse Fest, so we hung out and talked for a while, and I was meeting Fred and Chantal, Fred our statistician, and Chantal his girlfriend, for dinner, and so we invited Janine along, and so Janine got to go to dinner. We went to the Disney's Paradise Pier Hotel, their PCH Grill, which was really highly rated in the guide, and I swear we were smoking crack when we wrote that.
Uh-oh.
Because half the stuff that was on the menu, supposedly they had sushi and stuff, but I mean, really, it was just burgers and fries and cheese fries and ribs. It was almost like a scaled back Applebee's menu, and it's not like Applebee's is known for the 40-page list of options anyway. It was weird. So, but that was night number one. I went back to my hotel. Oh, so the hotel I'm staying at, right? Quality Inn and Suites. And it's literally around the corner from Disneyland. And it was the least expensive hotel I could find that didn't just scream out instant death in the parking lot. So a couple of interesting things about the Quality Inn and Suites. By the way, it's very clean. It's on South Manchester Drive in Anaheim, and I would definitely stay there again. It was by far the smallest hotel room I have ever stayed at in my entire life. It was 121 square feet.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
It's 11 by 11. I had to measure it. I could almost, but not quite, sit on the edge of the bed and wash my hands in the sink.
That's like one of those hotel rooms from National Lampoon's European Vacation.
It was so. And the thing was, the bed was comfortable. It was clean. They had really large refrigerator. They had a microwave. They had a coffee maker. And it was $50-some a night. I mean, it was literally I could see the Matterhorn from my room. It was just. It wasn't a bad location. It was
not so bad.
No, it wasn't. It was clean enough. I mean, it wasn't super clean. The air conditioner never really got cold. But again, for $53 a night, the next closest one was actually the Howard Johnson's, but it would have been another $40 a night. I don't know if I would have paid that for 5 nights. It would have been another $200 on the hotel. I just didn't spend enough time in the hotel, and it was perfectly safe, by the way, too. All the Disneyland hotels within walking distance, every one of them I visited, were perfectly safe. With the one though that was really weird while I was doing the tour was there's this.
How could you be perfectly safe if you're getting into all of them for free?
Yeah, I mean, like walking around them, like the area around them was perfectly safe.
Excuse me, housekeeping. I need to get into this room.
So this was I actually called Bob, and I actually didn't have to bribe anyone, but Bob's words to me, I'm like, Bob, how am I gonna get into these rooms? And Bob was like, well, Len, you can get farther with $5 in a kind word than you can with a kind word alone, which I thought was really funny. So I was touring a Best Western, and there's like the string of hotels on South Harbor Boulevard, all one right after the other, and they're all pretty much the same. They're all like Best Westerns or roughly the equivalent, except for the last one, which was right next to a fish and chips place. So you walk into the hotel, and all you smell is the oil, the fish oil.
Ew.
That they've been frying. Yeah, that was nasty. So that's not going to get a good rating. But other than that, I mean, it was pretty good. So that was that night. So we had a nice dinner, and I went to bed because I was exhausted. Next morning, woke up, went to DCA, and I was all super excited because it was the Disney theme park that I had never been to. So the park actually opens at 10. I got there at 8, and got my ticket and everything, and I was literally, other than the family that opened the park, I was literally the first person in the park, and I walked really fast to Soarin' over California and did that first. So we did Soarin', and I met one of our listeners there, Kelsey. Hey, Kelsey. And we right after rode Soarin', and then we did Tower of Terror. I don't know how you screw up Tower of Terror, but they managed to do it.
It's very different than the one. It's not very different.
Oh, you didn't like it?
It's different than the one at the studios.
Well, let me just say, it's just to kind of ruin the suspense here. I really did not like DCA very much at all. Wow. I mean, I had a lot of fun touring with Kelsey. I thought the Soarin' ride there was, I mean, it was essentially exactly the same theming as in Epcot. It kind of makes more sense because it's actually called Soarin' over California there, as opposed to just plain Soarin'. That ride was fine. The front part of the park, which contains the Soarin' ride, the Grizzly River Rapids run, I think that was a great ride. And there's some adventure trails there related to the Brother Bear theme. That part was okay. I thought their studios backlot area was passable, but not necessarily good. Tower of Terror there's no actual horizontal movement of the elevators across the lobby. It's really just move backward into a shaft and go up and down. So I think in terms of effect,
and there's no fifth dimension scene either.
There's no fifth dimension, right? The scenes are flatter because you don't travel horizontally, so the perspective is different on each of the scenes. I thought it was, they took the cheap way out and it looked at. The other interesting thing is apparently it's either DCA or the ride itself is not very popular on weekdays because they weren't running Fast Pass, which is unusual. Did you notice when you went into Tower of Terror that it just seemed a little too lively as you were walking it? That was my impression. It was just a little too happy. I mean, I thought the theming in the lobby was absolutely fine. Just didn't see the dust and the
cobwebs.
Cobwebs and the. I thought I didn't actually notice that part. It was still kind of early for me. I wanted to clean. I rode clean. I rode Monsters. Sully, Mike and Sully to the Rescue, whatever the Monsters Inc. ride there. That was actually pretty well done for a pretty simple dark ride. They actually do a scene where you go through the doors.
Right.
And that part was pretty cool. I'll give him credit on that. That was a good ride.
It was cute.
It was cute. I like the Grizzly River Rapids run, whatever it was, is a very good ride. Actually, way better than its counterpart, Kali River Rapids, in the Animal Kingdom. Much longer, much more bouncy and active ride. I mean, it's much more intense. Although I don't know that intense is the right word, but it's much more fun. You get much more bouncing around. I got soaked even with a poncho on it. The back of the park, which is the Paradise Pier area, and I forget the name of it because frankly I don't care. I'll never go back. Is essentially the kind of park that Walt had in mind when he said, I'm going to build something better than this, and built Disneyland. It's basic amusement. I mean, the rides are fine as they go. California Screamin' is a nice roller coaster. There is no theming. The Sun Ferris wheel thing is a nice Ferris wheel as far as it goes, but there's no theming. I didn't do any of the Midway games because, after about 15 minutes of walking around it, I said, what we have here is Dinoland writ large. And I hate Dinoland. It's Mulholland Madness is essentially Primeval Whirl. And there's a ride there that is nothing but the swings on chains that you get, spinning seats on chains that you get in pretty much any amusement park. They've got those.
Wow.
They've got rides that just shoot people up and then drop them down, and variations on that. I mean, in terms of theming, it's just poorly done. I don't know that there's any saving it. That's the thing that killed me. It's funny. We're in the town that I live, Summerfield. We're doing a Founders Day. It celebrates the founding of the town. 200 some years ago. Yeah,
it celebrates the founding of the town.
Ezekiel Springfield. Yeah, Summerfield. So we're actually going to have one of those mechanical swingy chair things here. I'm like, oh, you paid $70 or whatever to get into DCA. we got one here in Summerfield.
Wow.
A couple of cool things. I mean, they did have a couple of minor cool things. They actually did a tortilla making tour where they show you the machinery, and at the end you get a free tortilla. Same thing for sourdough. I thought that was pretty cool. I didn't think the food and their miniature version of Food and Wine. They have a Food and Wine festival going on there. it was essentially like the kind of food and wine festival we could have all pulled off ourselves with a couple of cookbooks and a couple of nice Chiantis. Wow. It was
wow.
It was. I mean, it's an unfinished park. And
what was your impression of Toy Story Mania? The difference between the two of those, because it's very different.
It was actually. I thought I could be totally wrong on it. First of all, there's no air conditioning in the queue there, and it was hot. They have ceiling fans going, and it's outdoors. The queuing is outdoors, so that kind of sucked. I thought the ride itself was actually pretty good. I scored more points on that than I had on any version in Walt Disney World. Although I still got beat by Kelsey, and I think I ripped a tendon in my shoulder trying to beat her.
Oh, you gotta see Dr. James Andrews now.
I know. You gotta get some steroids or something to shoot me up, but but overall, I mean, I got to the park at 10. By 2:30, I was done with the park, and that included lunch. And I had literally everything was a walk on. Wow. Didn't have to use Fast Pass once.
It sounds like my experience at Universal.
I mean, really, the back half of it is just not a Disney theme park. I wanted to enjoy it. I mean, I like Disney theme parks. I think some of the things that they're doing, they're actually gutting the entire middle part of the park to do a sort of a Fantasmic-like lagoon water show. That might be good. But it's definitely not a full day park. It's barely a half day park. I think the reason why they opened it at 10 and the reason why they're doing this lagoon show is to try and keep people there after dark. I just don't see it. I'd walk across the street, literally walk across the street to Disneyland.
Well, let's do that. Why don't we end the show on this one? What was your favorite part of Disneyland?
So I actually spent the next 2.5 days in Disneyland because I really like Disneyland quite a bit. Pirates of the Caribbean in Disneyland, I'd forgot how good it was. Just real quick, it's roughly 3 times the size of, or twice the size of Pirates of the Caribbean in Walt Disney World. There are more scenes in that simply don't exist in Disneyland than there are comparable scenes in both rides. Easily half the ride is missing in Walt Disney World, and it is just so immersive and so well themed. In fact, the whole New Orleans Square, I think, there's no counterpart in Walt Disney World. Also on Main Street, they still have the cinema where they show Mickey cartoons, and they still actually have the Penny Arcade. I think the Main Street in Disneyland is a lot better. I do think that Frontierland, Splash Mountain, Big Thunder Mountain are better in World. I think Toontown is better in Land. I think the food, we actually ate in every counter service restaurant. We ate one of everything in every counter service restaurant in Disneyland, but we'll have to save that for another show.
Cool. Well, Len, I thank you for your stories and your very, very honest opinions on things. I mean, sometimes it's got to be said, and truly appreciate that. So that'll do it for us today. If you want to find our older episodes, read our show notes, or send us your comments, visit the WDW Today website at WDWtoday.com. For Len Testa, Mike Scopa, Mike Newell, and the fabulous Annette Owens, I am Matt Hochberg. We'll see you on the next show.
Stupid Judy, stupid energy.
This has been a production of Mouse World Radio.